So let us start network primer part 2, which will cover mainly subnetting, subnet mask, and different types of addresses, public IP addresses, private IP addresses in different classes. So subnet mask, coming to subnet mask, so when we assign some IP address on the TCP IP node, जब भी आप अपने कंप्यूटर पे IP address assign करते हैं, so you must have seen that in addition to IP address, we are also assigning subnet mask. So this subnet mask is very important. Because with the help of this subnet mask, your system software or your computer or your application software can extract network portion from the IP address, can extract host portion from the IP address. And they can calculate how many PCs are there in the same network. So with the help of IP address and subnet mask, it will be easier to calculate the network portion and host portion. For example, we are assigning some subnet mask value with this IP address. In addition to that, we are also assigning default gateway and DNS server address. So this subnet mask is also a 32-bit number applied with the IP address. So by applying this IP address and subnet mask, our computer can extract network portion and host portion from the IP address by performing AND operation between IP address and subnet mask. तो जो लॉजिकल एंड ऑपरेशन होता है उसको आईपी एड्रेस और सबनेट मास्क के साथ कंबाइन करने पे जो भी रिजल्ट आएगा वो हमारा नेटवर्क एड्रेस होता है. So it facilitates identification of network address and node address of the host. A value of 1 is assigned to any bit that is a part of network address. तो सबनेट मास्क में जो भी वैल्यू 1 होती है 255 का मतलब हो गया 11111. So this value indicate network portion और जहां पे 0 होता है सबनेट मास्क में वो portion indicate करता है host portion. As a human being, it is very easy to check which portion is host portion and which portion is network portion. But as a computer software, as a system software are always dependent on combination of IP address and subnet mask. By applying logical AND operation between IP address and subnet mask, they will be able to extract network portion and host portion. So each IP address is a pair of network ID and host ID. The network address is the net ID with host 0. तो कोई भी IP एड्रेस का होस्ट पोर्शन को आप 0 कर देंगे, बाकी पोर्शन को एज इट इज रखते हैं, तो वो आपका नेटवर्क एड्रेस बन जाता है. तो masking, coming to masking, तो masking is the operation that is performed between IP address and subnet mask by applying logical AND operation between IP address and subnet mask. So with the help of this masking operation, we can extract network address and host address. Suppose this is the IP address 141.14.2.21, and with the help of this subnet mask in the background, we can perform some AND operation. So what we will get network address 141.14.00. So जहाँ पे 00 पोर्शन है उसको आप 00 कर देंगे, 2.21 पोर्शन को 0 कर देंगे, ऑटोमेटिकली वो नेटवर्क एड्रेस हो जाएगा. And 2.21 will indicate the particular host IP address, host ID. Now coming to subnetting. So why we are learning this masking and subnet mask? Because it is normally not feasible to use a large network. For example, in class B, the default total number of hosts or IP possible in a single class B network is 65,534. So normally it is not possible to use this number of PC, this number of IP address in a single network. So we generally divide this large network into a smaller network to effectively utilize all the IP address by dividing this large network into a smaller network. And what will happen if we try to connect 65,534 computer by means of thousands of switch? To connect 65,534 computer by means of a number of 24 port switch, we will require around 2000 नंबर ऑफ स्विच, सबको आपस में कनेक्ट कर दिया, सबसे पीसी लगा दिया, तो इट विल क्रिएट ए वेरी बिग ब्रॉडकास्ट डोमेन, लार्ज ब्रॉडकास्ट डोमेन। एंड इफ ए सिंगल पीसी क्रिएट ए प्रॉब्लम, आईपी कॉन्फ्लिक्ट अराइज होता है, या कोई भी एक पीसी से कॉन्फ्लिक्ट या इशू अराइज होता है, या कोई भी एक स्विच में लूप बन जाएगा, तो इंटायर 65,534 कंप्यूटर अफेक्टेड हो जाएंगे। So this is a example of bad network design. So this bad network design can be upgraded in good network design, can be created with the help of subnetting by dividing this large network into smaller one by subnetting process. So how subnetting is done? Subnetting is a art of pen and paper. ये मैथमेटिकल कैलकुलेशन के बेसिस पे ही आप डिजाइन करते हैं, कैलकुलेट करते हैं कि हमारा न्यू सबनेट मास्क क्या होगा, जिससे डिफॉल्ट सबनेट मास्क ना यूज करके हम सबनेटिंग करने के लिए कुछ पोर्शन, होस्ट पोर्शन का एक्वायर करके उसको सबनेट मास्क का पार्ट बना दें, तो हमें सबनेटिंग हो जाए। तो इट इज जस्ट ए मैथमेटिकल कैलकुलेशन ऑन यूजिंग पेन एंड पेपर, एंड ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ योर कैलकुलेशन यू कैन डिजाइन योर नेटवर्क। To create a subnetwork, to create a subnetting process, we need to acquire, borrow some of the bits, we need to utilize some of the bits from host portion में से कुछ bits को हमें लेना पड़ता है और उसको subnet mask का part बनाना पड़ता है। After that, you will be able to divide the original network into a smaller network. So what is the reason behind subnetting? Most of the IP address assignment were not used very efficiently. अब 65,534 कंप्यूटर एक नेटवर्क में लगाना हो, आपके पास 500 कंप्यूटर है एंड यू आर यूजिंग क्लास बी आईपी एड्रेस, तो रिमेनिंग 65,000 आईपी एड्रेस विल बी वेस्ट, विल गो वेस्ट, वो बेकार हो जाएंगे। आपके पास इवन आपका 254 कंप्यूटर का भी नेटवर्क बनता है एंड यू हैव ओनली 50 कंप्यूटर इन ईच नेटवर्क, सो यू कैन नॉट यूटिलाइज 250 आईपी एड्रेस in this network. So normally at the end of ISP, internet service provider, they want to divide this entire block, the large block, into smaller block for their variable number of customers. तो एक कोई ISP है, उसके डिफरेंट कस्टमर्स हैं, उसके वेरिएबल नंबर ऑफ कस्टमर्स है। कनॉट प्लेस में 500 कस्टमर्स हैं, लोधी रोड पे 1000 कस्टमर्स हैं, किसी लोकेशन पे 2000 customers हैं, so they want different blocks of network or they want smaller block of network. So this can be achieved with the help of subnetting process. And by subnetting, we can divide the large network, large broadcast problem network into smaller broadcast domain. एक 65,534 के साथ हम ब्रॉडकास्ट कराएं, एक पीसी ब्रॉडकास्ट करेगा तो वो ब्रॉडकास्ट सारे 65,000 कंप्यूटर तक प्रोपगेट होगा। अगर उसी को स्मॉलर पार्ट में डिवाइड कर दें, 500 कंप्यूटर का 500 का हम लोग एक स्मॉलर सबनेट बना दें, तो वो एक सिंगल नेटवर्क का ब्रॉडकास्ट सिर्फ 500 कंप्यूटर तक लिमिटेड रहेगा। Many ISP mining sites requesting for multiple network number due to variable number of customers. The benefit of subnetting: before subnetting, you have a flat network having 65,000 hosts. So it will be very difficult to manage 65,000 computers. You cannot apply proper firewall rule. You cannot apply effective IP address allocation. Single problematic PC will become problem for all 65,000 computers. Performance will be also degraded. To reduce network traffic, to simplify the management, to create smaller broadcast domains, subnetting is required. After subnetting, this entire big network will be divided into smaller network and smaller independent network. ये network separate हो जाएगा, ये भी separate हो जाएगा, ये भी separate हो जाएगा, ये separate. And all these separate independent network can be interconnected with the help of some L3 device or router device. तो बेनिफिट ऑफ सबनेटिंग, ओवरऑल ट्रैफिक भी रिड्यूस हो जाएगा। पहले ट्रैफिक, सारे कंप्यूटर का ट्रैफिक इस बैकबोन से जा रहा था, अब क्या होगा, ये स्मॉलर नेटवर्क का ट्रैफिक यहाँ तक लिमिटेड रहेगा, सबके ट्रैफिक अलग अलग सेगमेंट में होगा। स्मॉलर नेटवर्क आर इजियर टू मैनेज। अब इस राउटर पे या यहाँ पे कोई फायरवॉल है, यू कैन इजीली अप्लाई रूल फॉर दिस सेगमेंट। You want to apply a rule for this segment only, lab A, lab B, management team, physics department, chemistry department, vice chancellor office. So there can be different types of network can be created with the help of subnetting. And there can be separate access control list rule, ACL rule in the router in accordance with the different subnetwork. तो ये इसको मैनेज करना इजी हो जाएगा, ट्रबल शूट करना इजी हो जाएगा। किसी एक सेगमेंट का प्रॉब्लम होगा तो सिर्फ उसी सेगमेंट पर फोकस करना होगा। और यहाँ पे क्या होता है, यहाँ पे प्रॉब्लम कहाँ है, इसको ढूंढने के लिए आपको लगभग 65,000 कंप्यूटर तक आपको पूरी एफर्ट लगानी पड़ती है। और यहाँ पे जब कोई एक सर्विस डाउन होगी तो सिर्फ एक पर्टिकुलर सेगमेंट अफेक्टेड होगा। तो यहाँ पे सेगमेंटेशन, सेग्रीगेशन भी एक इंपॉर्टेंट है सिक्योरिटी के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से। Increase the network manager control over the address space. You can effectively utilize the IP address as per your requirement, as per your number of computers in each network. So how subnetting is done? So before going to subnetting process, we should have look on the default subnet mask. तो पहले हम डिफॉल्ट सबनेट मास्क देख लें कि क्लास ए का डिफॉल्ट सबनेट मास्क क्या डिफाइन किया गया, 255.0.0.0। ये क्या है, इट इज अ डिफॉल्ट सबनेट मास्क ऑफ क्लास ए आईपी एड्रेस विदाउट एनी सबनेटिंग। फॉर क्लास बी वी हैव 255.255.0.0, क्लास सी के लिए 255.255.255.0। So this is the default subnet mask applied with the class A, B, C respectively. And when we want to create subnetting, we have to borrow some of the bits from this portion. उसके बाद हमारा सबनेट मास्क चेंज हो जाएगा, तब डिफॉल्ट नहीं रह जाएगा। उसके बाद जो भी कैलकुलेशन के बाद जो भी रिजल्ट आएगा वही सबनेट मास्क हमें कंप्यूटर को, पीसी को असाइन करना पड़ेगा। तो ये सबनेट मास्क डिफॉल्ट होते हैं क्लास ए के, क्लास बी के, क्लास सी के। अब आते हैं सबनेट एड्रेस। तो नॉर्मली बिफोर सबनेटिंग डिफॉल्ट सबनेट मास्क में क्या होता है, कोई भी आईपी एड्रेस में दो पोर्शन होता है, किसी भी सबनेट मास्क में दो पोर्शन होता है, एक नेटवर्क आईडी होता है और एक होस्ट पोर्शन होता है। जितने 255 वाले पोर्शन होते हैं वो नेटवर्क पोर्शन इंडिकेट करते हैं और 0 वाले पोर्शन होस्ट आईडी इंडिकेट करते हैं। सबनेटिंग करने का मतलब क्या होता है कि यू हैव टू बोरो सम ऑफ द बिट्स फ्रॉम होस्ट आईडी। तो उसको बोलते हैं सबनेट आईडी, या कितना नंबर ऑफ बिट्स आपने एक्वायर किया होस्ट पोर्शन से, उतना नंबर ऑफ सबनेट क्रिएट होगा। तो द नंबर ऑफ सबनेट क्रिएटेड will be dependent on how many number of bits acquired from host portion. After subnetting, you will have something like this. जो नेटवर्क आईडी था पहले वाला 255 डॉट समथिंग समथिंग, वो तो था ही। फिर सबनेट आईडी से आपका डिसाइड हो जाएगा कि नया सबनेट मास्क क्या बनेगा, और बाकी जो बच जाएगा वो होस्ट आईडी वाले पोर्शन में 00 तो रहेगा ही। तो ए सबनेट एड्रेस इज क्रिएटेड बाय बोरोइंग सम ऑफ द बिट्स डिपेंडिंग ऑन हाउ मेनी सबनेट आप क्रिएट करना चाहते हैं, हाउ मेनी होस्ट यू वांट इन ईच सबनेट। उसी अकॉर्डिंगली हमें टोटल नंबर ऑफ बिट्स एक्वायर करना होगा, कैलकुलेट करना होगा। तो किसी भी क्लास में आप सबनेटिंग कर सकते हैं, डी और ई को छोड़ के क्लास ए, बी, सी। ए में, बी में और सी में भी सबनेटिंग की जा सकती है। ए में ओरिजिनली कितना होस्ट आ रहा था, 16.8 मिलियन आईपी एड्रेस आ रहे थे। बी में 65,534 आ रहे थे, सब डिफॉल्ट सबनेट मास्क थे। और सी में 254 नंबर ऑफ पीसी एक सिंगल नेटवर्क में क्रिएट हो रहे थे। After subnetting, this numbers can be further divided into a smaller group of independent networks. So how many bits you can take from the host portion for different class? In class A, minimum 1 bit can be acquired from host portion मैक्सिमम 22 बिट कैन बी टेकन फ्रॉम द होस्ट पोर्शन। क्लास ए में से पूरा तो ले ही नहीं सकते हैं, पूरा लेने का मतलब है 0 बिट जब हो जाएगा तो होस्ट कहां से बनेगा। होस्ट के लिए कम से कम 1 बिट तो होना चाहिए, एक नहीं 2 बिट होना चाहिए। 1 बिट से तो कभी होस्ट बनेंगे ही नहीं, क्योंकि 2 to the power 1 minus 2 0 हो जाए, 2 to the power 2 minus 2, तो कम से कम 2 bits must be available in the host portion. Similarly, in class B, we can have minimum 1 bit can be used for subnetting and maximum 14 bit can be taken from the host portion. And class C, minimum 1 bit and maximum 6 bit can be taken from host portion. So these are the total number of bits that can be utilized in the process of subnetting for class A, class B, and class C. So this is the default subnet mask. Default subnet mask में कोई subnetting नहीं होती। तो ये जो 16.8 मिलियन आईपी एड्रेस 65,534 या 234, 254 आईपी क्लास C में आ रहा था, वो डिफॉल्ट सबनेट मास्क के फेस में आ रहा था। आफ्टर सबनेटिंग you can divide this number of IP address into smaller independent subnets. So default subnet mask means something like this 255.0.0.0 अब बाइनरी में कन्वर्ट करेंगे तो you will have 11111 और रिमेनिंग 00। इसी तरह से क्लास बी में 255.255.0.0 तो बाइनरी में आप 1111 सारे में रहेगा और बाकी 00 रहेगा। तो ये आपका डिफॉल्ट सबनेट मास्क का सिनेरियो है विदाउट एनी सबनेटिंग। Before subnetting, we have to determine the number of required network ID. कितना हम लोग सबनेट पोर्शन एक्वायर करने वाले हैं, क्यों करने वाले हैं, this must be determined. Determine the number of required host ID per subnet. Determine the total number of subnet to be created. Determine the total number of hosts required in each smaller network. ये सब कैलकुलेशन पहले से प्री डिसाइडेड होना चाहिए, उसके अकॉर्डिंग हम सबनेट मास्क कैलकुलेट करेंगे। बेस्ड ऑन द नंबर ऑफ बिट एक्वायर्ड फ्रॉम द होस्ट पोर्शन यू कैन कैलकुलेट टोटल नंबर ऑफ सबनेट कितने बनेंगे, टोटल नंबर ऑफ होस्ट कितने होंगे हर सबनेट में, और रेंज ऑफ आईपी एड्रेस क्या आएगा नया सबनेट के अकॉर्डिंग, ये सब कैलकुलेट कर सकते हैं। बिफोर डूइंग द सबनेटिंग there is some shortcut method to immediately convert the binary number into decimal. Because subnetting आज के डेट में आपको कुछ करना भी नहीं है, बहुत सारे सबनेट कैलकुलेटर आते हैं, तो you can easily find out online subnet calculator. So you will not require any pen and pencil, but at least first time आपको पेन पेपर पे करना पड़ेगा, उसके बाद आप सीधे ऑनलाइन सबनेट कैलकुलेटर before the designing of network you can use online subnet calculator. So there are many websites who are offering these services without any calculation on pen paper. Simply provide which class to be used for subnetting, suppose class A, B, C. Suppose I am taking the example of class B. Then which subnet mask you want to use. So here you can see that we have different types of subnet mask value coming 255, 255, 255, dot 252, dot 255, 64. So these are the list of IP subnet mask. So this is the default subnet mask for class B. And after that we can have dot 128, 192, 224. So these are the, suppose I am taking this one. And they are saying that which IP address to be used. Suppose I am typing 172.16.15. Something. Calculate. So it is showing something It is showing something like that.
So the IP address which you have entered is wrong.
Yes, yes, it is wrong, but it is why it is asking this IP address. I think it is not required, but I can give this one 0.0. It should have asked about the
No,
network.
but you are inputting 1972 in the initial.
Okay, okay. It should be 172. It is not showing any. Again, there is something wrong here. Actually, the look and feel and interface is not good as per our requirements. This IP subnet calculator, there can be different types of subnet calculator depending on programmer logic. So here, yes. Now it is showing something like this, that with this option, with this requirement, we have following number of, this is our network, this is our network address, and this is usable network IP range, and this is the broadcast IP address for a particular. So these types of calculations are coming, and how many subnets are there. So these are the first subnet, second subnet, third, fourth. So now this single network is divided into several number of subnetworks. So this is the calculator. So there can be different calculator available in this platform. So before going in the subnetting process, we can have some logic to calculate the shortcut technique to calculate the decimal equivalent. Suppose this is a 8-bit of number having 1 in the most significant bit, 1. यहाँ पे 1 है, बाकी 0, 0, 0 है. So it can be immediately calculated as 128 because this bit can be equivalent to 128 and 64, 32, 16, 8 column is represented in this form. So where one value is there, you should add this corresponding value. Suppose 128 is only there with 1, remaining are 0. So you can immediately write 120. Similarly, 1100 is there, so 128 and 64 of this column. 128 plus 64, 190. So you can easily calculate decimal equivalent of a binary number by adding the column value. For example, here all value are 1111. It should 255. If you add all this number 128 plus 64 plus 32, it will be 255. Similarly, if you add this number, you will get 254. So this is the shortcut method to immediately calculate the decimal equivalent. Now coming to computing the net and host portion from a given set of subnet mask values. So here in this example, we are having subnet mask, given subnet mask value is given, and on the basis of that, we have to calculate how many subnet will be created and how many hosts will be created. So 254 is nothing. 1 minute, I am opening the whiteboard. Suppose we have to calculate, or this whiteboard is visible.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Suppose in this example, what we have, we have 172.16.0.0/24. /24 is a shortcut method to use subnet mask. It is also known as CIDR notation, CIDR, classless interdomain routing, CIDR notation. Why it is known as CIDR notation will be covered in upcoming slide. So with this example, we can easily calculate what is the meaning of 172.16.0.0. So it is indicating that we want something from class B. So it is a class B series of IP address, and the /24 means 24 bits of 24 bit is used for subnet mask. So it 8 plus 8 plus 8, 24. So we can have 255.255.255.0. So it is actually 24. And by default, class B subnet mask is default subnet mask. Default subnet mask is 255.255.0.0. But in our calculation example, it is given that subnet mask value is /24. So we are not using the default because default portion is only this portion. So we have taken 8 bits from the host portion, from the default subnet mask, 8 bits. So this number of bits will decide how many subnet will be created. So how many bits we have taken from the host portion? 8 bits. So total number of subnet with this example, number of subnet will be 2 to the power 8. Here -2 will be not there because we are calculating the subnet. Total number of smaller network that will be generated with the help of this subnet mask, new subnet mask, 255.255.255.0. So 2 to the power 8 means 532, 664, 7, 120, 256. 534, 32, 6. Here. So with this example, we can have maximum 256 number of subnet can be created. It means originally this subnet without any subnetting, with default subnet mask, how many network was there? With this example, one network with 65,534 hosts. In single network, there were 65,534 computers were available in single network. So it is impractical, it is not practical, it is impossible to connect all these PCs in a single network by connecting multiple layer 2 device. So this large network can be divided by taking some of the portion from the host. If you take 8 bits from the host portion, we will have now 256 independent networks. And how many bits are remaining? The number of hosts in each subnet will be now, how many bits are remaining in the host portion? This 0 is indicating host portion. So 8 bits will decide total number of host bits. So we have 2 to the power 8 minus 2. Why minus 2? The first address is always network address, last IP address belongs to broadcast IP. So that is why we are subtracting. So we have 256 minus 2, 254 hosts in each subnet. So we have now 256 subnet. तो इस सबनेट में 254 होस्ट हो जाएंगे. अब ये स्मॉलर नेटवर्क हो गया और हर सबनेट का अपना नेटवर्क एड्रेस होगा, अपना ब्रॉडकास्ट होगा, दूसरे सबनेट का नेटवर्क एड्रेस होगा, ब्रॉडकास्ट होगा. एंड ओरिजिनली बिफोर डूइंग द सबनेटिंग हम लोग का ये था 16 मतलब 255.255.0.0. तो इसमें पहला आईपी क्या था 172.16.0.0. लास्ट आईपी क्या था 172.16.255.255. So this first IP originally, in case of default subnet mask, is network address, and last one is broadcast IP address. And बीच में जितने भी IP होंगे 172.16.0.1 से लेकर 172.16.255.254, this IP address can be assigned on 65,534. तो ये आप कैलकुलेट करेंगे तो आपको टोटल नंबर ऑफ IP आएंगे 65,534. अब हमारा ऑब्जेक्टिव क्या है? वी हैव टू डिवाइड दिस नेटवर्क इनटू स्मॉलर वन. इफ वी टेक द एग्जांपल ऑफ /24 मीन 255.255.0, what will be the scenario? Now I am erasing this. अब ये हमारा सबनेटिंग का पार्ट आ गया. नाउ वी हैव 256 सबनेट and 254 host in each subnet. Now how to calculate the first subnet address, second subnet address, third, fourth, and so on? So there is some shortcut method. Otherwise, it can be very complicated also. So depending on which strategy you use to calculate or derive this value. So we are already familiar that this 255 is default part. Ignore this one. Only focus on this one. So now we have 255 in the subnet portion. So there is some shortcut method. Always use 256 and subtract the subnet ID decimal value 255. ये एक तरीका है, एक शॉर्टकट तरीका है कि आप इमीडिएटली सबनेट आप लिख देंगे. तो यू कैन हैव 256 माइनस 251. जो भी सबनेट मास्क की वैल्यू होगी नई वाली, जो पोर्शन आपने होस्ट से लेके बनाया है, दिस कैन बी सब्ट्रैक्टेड फ्रॉम 256. वॉट एवर रिजल्ट यू आर गेटिंग, नोट इट डाउन 1. So 1 will be now base number. This will be a base number. Now add this base number until, so it's 3, 1 plus 1 2, 2 plus 1. तो base number आपका फिक्स है 1, 2 plus 1 3, 3 plus 1 4. ऐसे ऐड करते रहे तब तक जब तक ये 256 पे ना पहुंच जाए. तो सपोज लास्ट में आएगा 255. After adding +1 in 255, 256 will be there. But actually 256 is not possible with 8 bits of 1. So 256 is nothing but 256 represents 0. So 0 will be the first subnet address, 1 will be the second subnet, 2 will be the third subnet, 3 will be the fourth subnet, ... and so on. 255 will be the 256 number of subnet. So now you have to write the IP address, range, network address, broadcast IP address of each subnet. Suppose I am writing this one. First subnet, second subnet, third subnet, ... 256 number of subnets. So first is network address and last one is broadcast IP address. Intermediate will be valid IP address. So first IP address will be 172.16.0.0. Second will be 172.16.1.0. Third will be 172.16.2.0. ... 172.16.255.0. Last IP, what will be broadcast IP address? Just subtract. So if you see this second subnet mask network address, अगर इससे पहले का नंबर देखेंगे, so what is the previous number before this 1.0? You can subtract it. We can have 172.16.0.255. 0.0 से लेकर 0.255. Similarly, 1.0 will end on 255. 2.0 have 172.16.2.255. last IP address, last broadcast IP address of last subnet will be 255.255. So this is the network address of first subnet. This is the second, third, fourth, and this is the broadcast address corresponding to first subnet. This is the broadcast IP address corresponding to second subnet, and in between 172.16.0.1 to 0.254. This is the valid IP range that can be assigned to PC in this subnet. So how many PCs are there? Total 254. If you count the 0.1 to 0.254, it will be 254. 1.1 to 1.254, 2.1 to 2.254. 254 in each subnet. So every subnet is having 254 number of hosts. So now these subnets are independent. Each subnet have their own network address, their own broadcast address. And all these subnets need to be connected with each other with the help of routing device or VLAN method. Now we cannot communicate. Before the implementation of this subnet mask, तो सबनेटिंग से पहले 172.16.1.1 से जब आप पिंग करते हैं किसी सिस्टम को बिफोर सबनेटिंग 172.16.230.21 तो पिंग हो जाता है क्योंकि सब एक नेटवर्क का कर रहे थे. अब यहां से आप 0.1 पीसी से आप 1.1 को डायरेक्टली पिंग करेंगे तो नहीं होगा. विदाउट राउटर नहीं होगा. स्विच में रख के भी करेंगे तो नहीं होगा. बिकॉज 1.1 is now a part of different network, 0.1 is now a part of different. और इस आईपी को जब आप असाइन करेंगे पीसी पे 172.16.0.1 तो यहाँ पे डिफॉल्ट सबनेट मास्क अब अप्लाई नहीं होगा. अब यहाँ पे होगा 255.255.0 and with the help of this subnet mask your system will automatically calculate what is the network portion, what is the broadcast portion, what is the valid IP address range possible with this network. So automatically it will come to conclusion that this IP address is not belonging to this network, it is part of some other network. So why this subnetting is important? Because when you try to apply policy in your firewall, in your IDS, in your SIM software, you want to apply policy for a particular block of network, then your firewall will ask what is the network address, what is the subnet mask. So you have to specify something like this. Suppose in our scenario, suppose we want to block the subnet mask. We want to block traffic coming from 256 number of 256 subnet. So this subnet, we want to block this 256 subnet, or we want to block only subnet number 2 having network address 172.16.1.0. So we can easily apply a rule that block traffic coming from 172.16.1.0/24. It means only 1.0 subnet will be blocked, 2.0 will be allowed, 0.0 will be allowed. So we can have separate rules for each subnet. So in this way, this IP address can be effectively and efficiently used and managed. And also now we have less wastage of IP address. Now we have only 254 computers in each block. And we can effectively utilize this number of IP address. In comparison to 65,000, now we have only 254 in smaller block. So this is the example of one example. Similarly, how many bits you are taking, accordingly total number of subnet will be decided. Suppose you are taking 2 bits, 2 to the power 2, 4 bits will be there for class C. In case of class C, we have only 8 bits remaining for host. from this 8 bit, we can take minimum 1 and maximum 6 bit. So minimum 1, maximum 6, because it was already indicated here. In class C 1 to 6, class B 1 to 14, or class A 1 to 22. So with the help of this, if you have concept of subnetting in your network, you can have separate access control list, separate policy for separate block. So there can be total 256 number of subnetworks are created, and we can apply separate policies for each block. So our ISP basically allocate IP address to organization in the form of block address. So this block is basically created with the help of subnet masking. Each country have uniquely allocated block of IP address. So if you want to block some particular country, if you want to block some special traffic or all traffic coming from a particular country, we have already list of blocks belonging to a particular nation, particular country. So on the basis of that, we can add all this block in our firewall to block all traffic coming from this IP block. So these types of real things happen in the real world. So after subnetting hub, if you have 2 bits, then 4. If you have acquired 3 bits from the host person, then 8 subnet can be done. 4, 16, 5 means 2 to the power 5, 32. 6, maximum you can take 6 bits from the class C host person. 64 number of subnet can be created, and accordingly we will have remaining number of bits. Suppose you have taken 6, it means only 2 bits are available for host. It means we can have maximum 2 to the power 2 minus 2, 4 minus 2, 2 number of hosts possible in single network. In case of this, we have 2 to the power 6 bit minus 2, 64 minus 2, 62 hosts in single network can be possible. So this is the example of class C. And after getting this, what we have calculated in our blackboard, so this is the different number of subnet. Accordingly, and this network can be further connected with the help of, suppose now we have 256 separate independent blocks. So all this network is now independent network. All these 254 are connected with the help of switch, and further it is connected with the help of router. And accordingly, ACL rules or firewall rules are defined inside this device. So in case of default subnet mask class B, it is a default subnet mask. We have only one network with 65,534 default subnet. After using this subnet mask, we have how many number of bits? 192. In case of 192, we have acquired 2 bits. So 2 bit means 2 to the power 2, 4 subnet, and remaining 8 plus 6 plus 8. In the third octet, 2 bits is being used for subnetting. Remaining 6 bits 0 वाले रह गए इसमें, और लास्ट वाले में 8. तो 6 plus 8, 14. 2 to the power 14 minus 2, 1600, 382. Similarly, यहाँ पे 6 bits acquire किए गए हैं. So this 6 bit means 2 to the power 6 minus 2, 6. नहीं, यहाँ माइनस नहीं होगा. 2 to the power 6, 64. रिमेनिंग कितने होगा? 2. थर्ड वाले में 2 0 है, और लास्ट वाले में 8 0 है. तो 10, 2 to the power 10 minus 2, 1022. इस तरह से हमारे होस्ट कैलकुलेट हो सकते हैं. ठीक है, तो